I'll give you a real quick background and then we'll get started. I grew up on a small farm in northwest Ohio, went to college, got a degree in agriculture, and taught what we call VOED, vocational agriculture, for 10 years. Then I went to work for a company called Dana, and I taught engine rebuilding in a big, huge machine shop back in the Toledo, Ohio area for the next 23 years. And what happened, as you know, in the engine business, about 2001 or so, it had pretty well, no one wanted to come learn to rebuild an engine anymore. So we ended up shutting that shop down. I went to work for Clevite that Dana owned and became kind of the bearing guy and the ring guy and the gasket guy for Clevite. My day job is the director of training. My weekend job, if you like racing, you'd probably like my weekend job. I'm the guy that goes to the track and sells the parts to the teams, looks at the problems they have and so on. I do NASCAR, NHRA, IHRA, Bonneville Salt Flats, tractor pulling and truck pulling. So I spend about 25 weekends in the summer out somewhere at a racetrack. Just came in from Pomona. I was at the NHRA Nationals in Pomona last weekend. So I love it. So it's a great job for me. Anyhow, I'm here to talk to you about gaskets. So let's get started. Whoops. Okay, we're good to go. 35 years I've been doing this on the gasket side, so I have a little experience. All that time's been with Victor Reinz. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, going forward, a little bit about Mahle, who we are. We're a big company, 65,000 employees around the world, roughly $14 billion a year in sales. In North America, we're a large supplier of engine parts and other components. And we have, this is just us now, the aftermarket group. We have 400 people work for us. We sell about $200 million a year in aftermarket parts. We sell pistons, rings, bearings, filters, turbochargers, gaskets, thermal products, tools and equipment, and starting in just a few weeks, large alternators and generators for construction and agriculture equipment. So we've got quite a wide line in the aftermarket there. My job is to know a little bit about all that stuff so I can train our sales guys and then ultimately come out and visit you, the customers. Where are you going to get your parts from with us? Well, our master warehouse, which is 330,000 square feet thereabouts, is in Olive Branch, Mississippi. We're down there because we're about 15 minutes from FedEx. Sorry, I'm standing in front of you. It's going to be hard to do this tonight and not stand in front of somebody, but we're about 15 minutes from FedEx, and it's really nice. They come in, make their last pickup at our place at like 5:30 in the evening, Central Time. So it gives you a cushion if you need an order, you know, to get it out that same day. Up till 5:30 Central Time, so it works out very good. We also have a warehouse in LA, Bell, California, which is Los Angeles area. We have another one in York, Pennsylvania. That comes in handy once in a while for you all when maybe it's late in the day and you've got a very important customer and they need something we have and they need it tomorrow. It's too late to get it out of Mississippi, but you know, California is another, 2 hours? Yep. So it gives you a chance to get a part out of California and have it tomorrow. Mahle Original Sealing Products, Victor Reinz. Let me give you a little background here on what's going on. As I said, I started for Dana and I worked for them 27 years. And then they got into financial difficulty and ended up going into bankruptcy, Chapter 11. And they had to sell off some businesses to raise money. And they sold Clevite and Perfect Circle and their aftermarket business to Mahle. Mahle, of course, that German company we just talked about. So old guys like me, what we did is at midnight, matter of fact, it's been almost 9 years ago, at midnight we retired from Dana, and at 12:01 a.m. we went to work for Mahle. So we were only unemployed for 1 minute. But that was 9 years ago, so I've been there at Mahle ever since. But what the deal was at the time, the economy was really bad. You know, you back up 9 years from where we're at today, and you know, things were pretty tough in 2007. And Mahle did not buy Victor Reinz. So they cut a deal with Dana, and Dana said, look, we'll give you a license to sell Victor Reinz in North America, use the brand name, do everything for 10 years. Okay? When that 10 years is up, we'll talk about going forward. Well, year 10 starts in just a couple weeks. And Dana told us just before Christmas, they said, we're not going to renew your deal when the 10 years is up. We think we can sell gaskets ourselves. So we're going to continue to supply you. Everything you buy from us today you can still get, but we're going to pull the brand name back and we're going to go to market, try to sell our own stuff. So what it means for you is sometime, we don't know exactly when, but sometime between now and the end of March next year, you'll start seeing these boxes go away. And the boxes will come, they'll still be blue and white, but they'll say Mahle on them. Everything else is going to look the same. When you open them up, they're going to look the same. But there will be a transition sometime, we don't know just when, sometime within the next year. Okay? We source about, and I told Jim today, and Scott, I don't stand up here and just kind of tell you stories. So I'll tell you how it is. We get about 40% of what we sell from Dana. 60% we find elsewhere, because Dana doesn't make everything you need to be in the gasket business. And like I say, Dana's agreed to sell us that 40%, but we're not naive enough to think, well, we don't need to worry. So we have already got backup plans in place. If something would happen and Dana said, oh, we're not going to ship you, we have contingency plans to keep shipping you the 9,000 part numbers that we have in the line. So we are, again, a full line supplier, 9,000 part numbers, roughly 1,200 more than you got now with Felpro. So it is a good line of product, and rest assured, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you if I didn't believe this. The biggest change you'll see is the color or the design of the box. Alrighty. So let's focus on these four. This is the Richard Odom long-winded story, but I'll try to keep on it. We're going to talk about coverage, content, form, fit, and function, and value. This is our coverage where we stand today. Domestic cars and trucks, we're at 95%, slightly better than Felpro. Asian, we're at 93%, slightly better than Felpro. European, we really whop them pretty bad here. We're at 80% European nameplate coverage. They're at 67%. And if you've worked on any diesel trucks, even though that's not pulled out there, you know we shine pretty good in the light duty, medium duty diesel truck business too. So our total coverage is 93% of the market, roughly again 9,000 part numbers. Felpro's at about 87%. And honestly, we're the only two even come close to full line coverage. So Dana's got their work cut out for them. Bear in mind, if we're only getting 40% of our stuff from them, what have they got to offer if they go on their own? 40%. Plus whatever they get from Magnum. If you follow the news, you know about 2 weeks ago they bought Magnum gaskets. Okay. These were our exclusives. This is the 1,226 part numbers that Felpro didn't have that we do. And you can see we broke them out there. 330 are domestic, 341 are Asian, and 550 are European. So that's kind of how it breaks out. So when you make this move, you're going to be in really good shape in terms of supplying your customers the product they need. Form, fit, and function. This is how it goes. Let me get a sample out. Your customer, let's say they're working on a Chrysler Pentastar 3.6 liter engine. You sell them a gasket set from Victor Reinz. If they take off this water pump gasket, pretty nice looking gasket, that's what they're going to get back from us. Not a piece of paper with silkscreen blue coloring on it or anything else. They're going to get what they took off the car. If the valve cover gaskets are rubber, that's what you're going to get from us. Matter of fact, and I'll show you this numerous times, we go as far as matching the color of all the little O-rings. So if it's an orangish red O-ring from Chrysler, it's going to be red from us. If it's blue from Chrysler, it's going to be blue from us. These engines today are really complicated. You know, a lot of techs don't see them all the time, so it's much easier to get all this back in the right spot when you're matching the color to what you took off the car. So we go that far. We match that color to the OE. Make sense? Okay. Also, there are some manufacturers that say you need to put a sealant on XYZ part of the engine, or you'll notice that when you take the engine down, they've glued something on. If a sealant's required, it'll be in the Victor Reinz box. So if there's no sealant in the box, Don't need to worry. Nothing required on that engine. Matter of fact, I can tell you after 35 years, what do you suppose ruins more gaskets than anything out there? Guys slopping on chemicals that they buy at your store and go crazy, you know, putting them on the gaskets. Silicone. Or they'll get a tube of silicone like this and feel compelled to use the whole thing on one engine, you know. But that's probably, when we look at warranty claims coming in, probably the biggest claims we have. Another thing here, let's open this set up a little farther. Head gasket, cardboard, head gasket. Okay? So even though we ship them from Mississippi to Sioux Falls, when you get them, they look just like the day we put them in the box. I've taken the padding out of here. We go so far as to put a little bubble wrap in here to keep the parts from shifting around. The other thing I like, there's a lot of small parts in here. They're all here because we do these sub-assemblies, seal this bag, and they go on a little conveyor belt across the scale. And if they're off, they get rejected. So you're either going to get all these or you're going to get zero. You know, there's no saying, well, darn, there was one little O-ring missing. It would have never made it out of our plan if one was missing. Because we do the first bag, we weigh it, and then we match every bag from then to that bag. Okay? Other nice thing about our sets, if they're a little bit complicated, there's instructions. No one ever reads them. But, you know, we put them in there just in case. Okay? So it's just a typical set here. And again, 99% of the time, matter of fact, this is a prime example. This is what came off that Chrysler vehicle. Every part in there. So customer orders this set, it's very familiar to them because that's what came off the vehicle. Now the other 1%, what's the story there? Typically it was the factory piece didn't work very good. Maybe it leaked, you know, or it was paper or something and whatever. But there's about 1% of the time we change the gasket, and it's almost always because the factory piece didn't work very good. Now our friends at Felpro, as you know, not quite as good. They're at about 89% of what come off the vehicle. They kind of slip here and there. They'll go back to paper. They'll go back to a composition head gasket when it's multi-layered steel from the factory. So not quite as good as us, as you can see here. And I don't need to go into all these details, but we got statistics guys, you know, that pull all this together. And you can see, you know, manifolds were 97%. Exhaust pipes, pretty exciting stuff, 99%. But probably the real thing to look at is, manifold gaskets, 96%. You can see again there, we stand pretty good in all those categories. We work hard. We learned a long time ago. Technicians get nervous when what they get in the box from us or from you doesn't look like what they took off. So we do our darndest to make sure that doesn't happen. By the way, you got a bunch of things here. I saw some of you scanning through them. This is the 1%. This is the stuff we've deviated from. This isn't all of them, of course. There's maybe 30 or 40 of these. But this is basically your 1% where we've deviated from the OE. And you'll see in each case there's a little explanation there why. Often it is we made an extra thick head gasket so customer could mill the block. Or we took the Chrysler gasket that was standard bore only and we opened it up so they could bore the block 20 over. But you know, it's where we've deviated somewhat from the factory. We'll print these sheets so you know that. Okay? I'm going to skip through some of these because we got more important stuff to look at. But this is the Jeep, and you can see these here. I'm going to skip right along till we get to some good stuff. This one here is an oil filter adapter, 3539, high value GM V6, really nice engine. The factory is multi-layered steel with rubber embossing. GM changed their part from the left to the right. There's GM's on the left, there's Victor Reinz in the middle, and here's a paper with blue stuff on it here at the right. So you can see we work very hard to match the OE in terms of fit and function. We figure if paper and blue coating was okay, probably General Motors would have used it, because it's cheaper than making that steel gasket. So that's kind of our philosophy. Whoops. Stuck here. There we go. Another nice thing I like about our stuff, having been on both sides of the street, most of the time you can see, before you open this, you can see that's what the head gasket looks like for this engine. So if it doesn't look like what the tech took off the vehicle, it's pretty easy. You can send it back. Check this out. This is called a manifold installation set. MIS is the prefix to the part number. We have 28 applications right now, and we're just printing a new sheet to send up to you all so you'll have a list of the 28. I call these manifold sets on steroids. When you open these up, first again you see we pack it pretty carefully. When you open it up, what you got in this set is enough parts to R&R the intake manifold without going and hunting anything. Well, to R&R the intake, you got to take the valve covers off. So there's your valve cover gaskets. And then you've got in here EGR and other gaskets that normally wouldn't come in an intake set, all put together again to make it easy for your technician. Those 28 sets got everything necessary to R&R the intake. The only thing that won't be in there is if it required new bolts. And we package those separately. We tried years ago putting the bolts in the set here. And what would happen by the time they got from Mississippi up here, the bolts had sloshed around in there and banged all the gaskets up and scratched them. So we take them out and sell them separately. But manifold installation sets. Now this one I want to address specifically because I'm sure most of you know this story. How many knew it was a story of Dexcool and the acid problem in the manifold gaskets? Hand up if you do. Good. Rest of you must be pretty new because this is what turned my hair gray. That and 2 daughters, but this is what turned my hair gray. Oh gosh, back in the 3.1, 3.4 liter engines. And I'll stand here and I don't come up here and give you a bunch of baloney. I'm not Richard, so I'm going to tell you the truth here. The original Chevy gasket was black plastic with a red bead around it. And that's what we had, and that's what Felpro had. And what happened is the OE gasket started to fail. The Dexcool, if people didn't change it, it would start to form an acid and become acidic. And in those gaskets, the black carrier, the black plastic carrier, it was exposed here in the coolant port, and that acidic coolant would start eating on that carrier and softening it up. And then it would go boom, and this rubber would push out, as many of you seen it, and then you'd have coolant down in the valley and ultimately down in the oil pan. Now I got to tell you, we were sleeping at the switch. And man, Felpro skunked us badly on this in terms of getting a fixed product out. And the story, and this is a true story, one reason Felpro was so quick is that really nice metal gasket that they came out with that you all have sold. That was the design they submitted to GM for this business. And they didn't get it, but they had the gasket all done because, they were on the ground floor there with GM to try to fix it. So they beat us by about 10 months coming to market with a fixed part. It was embarrassing. Matter of fact, I was running things back then, and I can tell you we paid, I put my foot down, I said, we're going to pay every legitimate warranty claim we have because this is a mess until we get it fixed. So in 1 year, I think we paid 20,000, 24,000 claims, and it was tough. But we stood behind every customer who'd sold one of those to somebody. Meanwhile, we fixed it. And it would have been kind of, embarrassing if we would have copied the Felpro steel and rubber. It's a nice piece, but everybody said, well, all you did was copy Felpro, So we decided not to. What we did is several things. And you're welcome to come look at these, and I think you got a sheet that describes it as well. Notice this plastic's gray, not black. This plastic is called non-hygroscopic plastic. It will not absorb liquids of any sort, acidic or otherwise. Okay, so that was the first thing we did. Notice the black rubber here. This black rubber is called HNBR. That stands for hydrogenated nitrobutyl rubber, I think. Anyhow, important thing to you is it's the same rubber that battery manufacturers use to separate the cells in a battery. HNBR rubber. Now, what are batteries full of? Acid. So if it'll separate the cells in a battery, it's not going to be phased by acidic Dexcool. So we went to this black rubber. Next thing we did, and when you look at these, actually I'll pass these two around here. When you look at the coolant port here, we surrounded the carrier totally with the black rubber. The old gasket the carrier showed there, you could see the black and then the red bead was set in. We totally surrounded it, so there was no way for the coolant to even touch this gray plastic. So that was the next step. Third step, and you'll notice these two little areas here on each end of the gasket when I pass it around. We knew that some people, usually do-it-yourselfers, they would get carried away with that RTV on the front and back, and it would screw up here and get around this coolant port. Well, if you want to ruin a rubber gasket, keep it from sealing, get it slick with RTV, and it will not seal. See, these little areas here are voids to take the extra RTVs that keep it away from the ports. And then finally, with plastic, unlike the steel that Felpro had, with plastic there's a danger of crushing it. If a technician gets a little over anxious, with an impact installing the manifold, you could crush the gasket. So we put metal load limiters on each end to keep that from happening. So here's the scoop. My left-handed friend. We all got to stick together. Us left-handers, so yep. Here's the scoop. The first year, second year, third year, and then I quit keeping track. In the first 3 years or so of the new design, we had 7 labor claims. So from 24,000 or so down to 7 over the next couple of years. So this fixed the problem. I'm embarrassed it took us so long, but it fixed the problem. We did it on the 4.3, the 5.7, all those engines of that design. So no, it doesn't look like Felpro, but I promise you it fixes the problem. Questions on this one? This is important, so if you got questions, speak up. All right. Let's move along, see where I've gotten lost to here. Oh, this is one of Odin's slides. He keeps me in line sometimes because I get long-winded and forget. Another nice thing about our sets is on the back is a picture of the contents, or the major contents, and a bill of material in 3 different languages, French, English, and Spanish. So if a customer is wanting to know, hey, is this gasket or that in the set, you can actually see the bill of material on the outside of the set. This is my favorite set because I think it sells for over $500, so it's a nice item if you sell it. And it sells pretty good. It's a 6-liter Power Stroke. Any of you sold a 6-liter Power Stroke set? I hope you have. It's been good for us. This is why it's so expensive. We don't have one sub-assembly in here. We have 3 huge bags full of stuff. So a lot of parts in this set. Then we still got a great big tray of other parts. And then under the tray, protected with paper on one side and cardboard on the other, is the head gasket. This is a Victor Reinz piece. It's made in Danville, Kentucky. In the very same plant they make the Ford gasket, or did when they supplied Ford OE. So this gasket is, in all practical purposes, identical to the Ford piece. Ford used a blue color around theirs rather than our black. This was an earlier design with a slightly different coolant port, but everything else is identical. It's a very good gasket. Again, 2 head gaskets separated by paper, so they look like new when you get them. Now your flyer on this one points out that our set has 193 pieces in here, which is a lot. The Ford set has how many? Anyone got that flyer? Oh, here we go. 102. And you got to knock off the head bolts because Ford's got head bolts in there too. We don't supply the head bolts because we have a lot of customers that want to go to ARP studs, and there's no sense forcing them to buy a head bolt set that they're going to throw away. So we sell the set. We sell the head bolts, but separately. Well, my question to you is, do you think we just put another 90 parts in there to brag, or do you suppose the stuff that's needed on the engine? Well, we firmly believe, and we do this research ourselves on all this, we firmly believe it's stuff that the tech needs to do the job. You got the wrong set here. So here's what happens if a guy buys this set or a gal buys this set from Ford. And maybe it's missing, maybe it's missing this. I'm not even sure what this is, but it's pretty cool looking. So your Ford set's missing this. You're the technician. You got two choices. Anyone know what they are? You got it. So I think, well, I'll run over to the dealer and get this. Oh yeah, we can get that for you. It'll be about 3 days, before we get it. Got to get it out of Detroit. Be about 3 days. So at that point, what's the technician say? Oh, it's probably all right. We can go ahead and reuse it. Well, what if it isn't all right? Then we got a warranty issue. So again, we feel strongly that you need this stuff to do the job right. So we put it in the set. Okay? Questions on this baby? Okay. Yeah, let's see. We hit that one good. Oh, yeah, Richard's talking about our 900 parts. We already mentioned that. We got real good coverage. We got ECAT. Somebody mentioned this to me this morning. Matter of fact, I was downstairs in your shop here. And one of the things he said to me, Scott, was, I like the Mahle Tech Service. They actually answer the phone, and there's somebody on the other end knows something about what I'm talking about. And he said, I'm just telling you what he said. He said, Federal Mogul, good luck ever finding anybody there who knows anything if you can get them to answer the phone. So we have very good tech service. Got a 1-800 line. They're open, I think, till 6 Central Time. We're in the same time zone you are down there in Mississippi. Okay? We feel that we've got very good packaging, as you can see here. Here's another thing I like, not picking on your current supplier, but Velcro set. First of all, if you want to see what's inside, what do you got to do? Cut it open. Yep. Okay. Our set, you want to see what's inside, open it up. There's what's inside. Having used Velcro over the years, I know what happens. Guy opens that set up, and one little O-ring falls off unnoticed on the floor. And then he says, or she says, that's the wrong set. It's not the right gaskets. I'll send it back to Sturtevant for credit. So they tape it all back up, send it to you for credit. So if you sell it to somebody else, what do you hear? Oh, I got that set from you. It's been opened, it's missing an O-ring. Now what do we do? It really is a pain in the neck in the parts business. And I don't know, does Velcro take them back? I don't think they do anymore, do they? They've really gotten crappy on their warranty. They used to, but they've really gotten crappy now on their warranty. What I like about us, again, is there's all those little parts. We don't have to worry about 1 or 2 falling out on the floor and getting lost. There they are. And remember, again, if there are a couple missing from us, it's never going to get out the door because it's getting kicked off that conveyor belt at the scale. This is pretty cool. This, by the way, this is a 5.9 Cummins headset. Anyone know what this is? I see smiling back there, but no one's volunteering. Well, it's kind of crude, but it's what Cummins says. Cummins head bolts are torque to yield design. In other words, they're stretched almost to the point where they stay stretched. Well, this little gauge, it tells you all about it on here. You lay the head bolt on here and gauge it. And if it's longer than the mark on the gauge, it's been stretched, and you need new bolts. So, let's open this puppy up. Again, you can see we follow this same philosophy time again. We protect the head gasket, and it's the most valuable part of a set, you know, and the most critical too. We protect it from all the other parts. The story on this Cummins set is we have the standard Cummins gasket, and then we have two thicker versions. One 10 thousandths thicker and one 20 thousandths thicker. Why would we want to do that? Yeah, exactly. Customer may mill the head or have to deck the block and need a thicker gasket to restore that compression height. So they're available from us. Okay? By the way, did you see any sealer in here? Nope. So what's that tell you about this Cummins set? Really, it doesn't need it. If it needed it, it'd be in there. Now, some of you in here have worked on engines before. Paper gasket. Doesn't require any sealer. But unless you're a magician or have three hands, sometimes it's really difficult to get the thing together and hold this gasket where it needs to be until you get it all bolted up. Would you all agree if you've done this? There's certainly nothing wrong with putting, well, I always use 3M weather strip adhesive on one side of this gasket. Then I can glue it either to the cover or to the block, and you have two hands free to get the rest of it installed. I've not ever seen an issue with a paper gasket that you couldn't do that. Now, we don't recommend nor advise gluing both sides, but one side to hold it together, no problem, okay? But that's your choice, so we're not going to put that glue in the set here. Questions on that? You're awful quiet here. I may beat my record, be done before an hour and 15 minutes is up at this rate. Oh, man. Well, I'm not done, but that's the end of Richard's story. When I go to the South, they accuse me of being a fast-talking Yankee when I go down there. But I had a couple more gaskets to show you, and then I really would, you know, this is a chance tonight to ask questions if you've got some. But I would be glad to entertain them. I can't tell you that I can answer them all. But there's a couple more novel parts, and you've actually got the flyers. This is the LS Chevy head gasket. And what we did there, and this doesn't mean anything to the installer, but it means things to people in the parts business. We took all the GM LS designs and consolidated it down to 4 part numbers. That means you got less parts on your shelf to cover all those engines than you would with another brand. Now for the installer, what do we print on the front of that gasket? They can't read it back there. You'll have to help them. Front. Okay? We have installers, as you know, that sometimes get confused. So we do our best to put front on there. Matter of fact, there's one of them here. This is pretty cool. They actually cut top right into the top layer of the steel with a stamp. You know, so it's there forever. It says top. So you know when you see that, which side of this gasket goes up? Well, the one where you can read top correctly. So pretty cool, huh? This is, we were talking about this before dinner tonight. This is the 5.7 Hemi, Chrysler Hemi. You've got a flyer on it as well. And we've done the same thing. We've consolidated the Chrysler part numbers down, I believe, to 3. We've opened up the standard bore that was Chrysler only fit a standard bore for a 20 over. So if a machine shop wants to bore it or hone it 20 over, this gasket will work. Okay. And then we have the Duramax right here. We sell a lot of Duramax parts. It's a good line for us. I was out about 3 weeks ago in Southern California, and I visited a guy out in the LA area called SoCal Diesel. and he makes a good living doing high-performance Duramax stuff. So I asked him, his name is Guy. I said, Guy, what are you using for head gaskets? Because we're talking 1,500 horsepower Duramax. He said, I'm still using yours. It works good. I stud the blocks, you know, and you know, our heads are absolutely flat. Everything is good. But he said, I'm still using your gaskets at 1,500 horsepower. So pretty good gasket. Okay. Now one more thing here. You've noticed I've held a bunch of head gaskets up tonight. I think everything I showed you has been what we call multi-layer steel, MLS. Right? A few of them have been black. Some of them have been silver with silk screening on. And I would explain the difference just happens to be maybe what plant they were made in or what the OE did. In both cases, the blue coloring here, the black coating here, it is a high-tech rubber type of material. And it's what gives you what we call fluid seal. It's what keeps the water from weeping out between the head gasket and the block. What makes a multi-layered steel gasket work? Well, let's just pass this one around. It's a good example. What makes it work is if you run your finger across this, you'll feel this area here where I'm running my finger across, it's raised up a little bit. It's called a raised bead. Some of you oldsters in here remember the small block Chevrolet shim head gasket, flat piece of steel with raised beads. It's taken that, you know, to the modern level. The difference is that Chevrolet gasket was basically soft steel. This gasket here, the top layer, is spring steel. They emboss the bead in there, and that bead then flexes up and down as the engine runs. Because if you know anything about engines, what's going on in an engine as it's running is the cylinder head's lifting up slightly and down, up and down, up and down, up and down like that. Because you've got a lot of firing pressure, and it actually lifts the head up off the gasket. So this bead acts like a spring. It relaxes as the head lifts up and compresses as the head pulls back down and seals that motor up for 150, 200, 300,000 miles. Okay? Now in the middle of this gasket, and I'll pass this around so you can look at it, it's a flat piece of galvanized kind of steel. It's called the stopper layer, and what it does is it gives those spring layers something to push against, because otherwise you're going to have trouble, you know, keeping a load on them, because one of them would be pushing on the other one. So we put a stopper in the center of these gaskets, and then the spring layers pushing down on the stopper from the top and pushing up on the stopper from the bottom. So most of the time, especially in head gaskets, you'll have at least 3 layers in the head gasket. You may have as many as 5 depending on the engine, but you'll have at least 3 layers. Okay? Now you'll see, I don't know that I have any here tonight, but you'll see and you'll sell some stainless steel manifold gaskets now, exhaust manifold gaskets. They're 2-layer. And there's no coating on them because, of course, exhaust manifold, you haven't got any coolant to worry about, so no sense spending extra money putting a fancy coating on it. So they'll be shiny, be stainless steel on one layer and then flat underneath it. So you'll see those as well. These gaskets, guess what the first motor sold in the U.S. with them on? We'll see who knows their history. We won't ask the controller, put him on the spot, but Scott, you've been around a while, right?
No, I'm kind of new.
Yeah. Anyone know what the first engine was sold in the U.S. with multi-layered steel? 4.6 liter V8 Ford. You got it. It was a Japanese gasket made by a company called Ishikawa, and they made that gasket in Bowling Green, Ohio, about 20 miles from where I live. And it was the first engine in the U.S. with anything other than a composition gasket. You know, in the old days, man, when I started here, ours mostly was what we called perforated core with paper pressed down into each side, fire ring flange made out of steel, and then coated with Teflon, you know, so you could get the thing apart. But those gaskets, by '94, we're starting to see the end of them. So Ford went to that head gasket, and probably by '98, '99, somewhere in there, man, almost the entire industry had changed to multi-layered steel. What was driving that, by the way, was those engines. The Ford is a good example. What was the block made out of? No, the block was cast iron. What was the head made out of? Aluminum. If I heat a block, iron block, and an aluminum head to the same temperature, which one expands the most? Do you know? The aluminum. 1.7 times farther than the iron. Well, what was happening in those days, and those of you who are in the parts business know this, because man, do we sell a gob of gaskets. What would happen, we called it fretting. The aluminum head would expand faster than the block, and if the gasket was stuck to both parts, and often it was, it would literally rip the gasket apart. So we'd see engines in, 20, 30, 40,000 miles where the gasket was leaking and the water's running out the engine. So, man, once the manufacturers figured out this is a lifetime deal, it was just like, whew. In just a couple years, composition gaskets had gone by the wayside, and everything we sold was multi-layered steel. Instead of needing a head gasket at 70,000 miles, now how far were we going? Well, my trusty Ford V6 has got 270,000 miles on it today with the factory multi-layered steel head gaskets. Bad for our business, but good for owners. So that's kind of what happened with the multi-layered steel. It went real quickly. Chevys, I can't promise that kind of mileage, but what can I say? Anyhow, yeah. Anyhow, as you gather, I could stand here and talk all night. We're excited about having your business. I'm going to do this 2 more nights this week, and then I'm coming out in end of March, and we're going out to Rapid and do 1 more out there. And then my old partner who worked with me for 30 years and retired, we've drug him back out of retirement for a few months. He's an excellent guy, worked in the shop with me for years. He ran the counter in a speed shop before he came to us. He will go out on these individual calls where you may have an installer or 2 or 3 who's saying, man, I don't know about this. I've been using Felpro for 40 years. John will come out and make those rounds and make those calls for you. So we intend to support you 100% in this deal. We're excited about it. And I wouldn't be here tonight if I wasn't totally confident that we're doing a good thing and you're doing a good thing. I really believe this. So how about questions? You guys were a little late. We'll let you slide, though, but I think there's food left, so. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, it ends the end of March next year, 2017. So we know by the end of March next year, there'll be no more Victor Reinz coming from Mahle. Guarantee it. And that's 40%. Well, we get 40% of our product from them, but remember, they've told us we don't intend to cut your product off. We just want the brand back so we can go to market. So we have, and we all know each other because we worked at Dana together. Those guys at Dana that are in the deal are guys I taught when they hired into the company, just like Odom. I trained Odom when he came in. He was a Dana guy. So we don't expect any disruptions other than the fact we're going to change our box and have to quit using that advertising. Now we got little stuff like, we've got packages and instructions and stuff that say Victor Reinz on it we'll have to fix as well. But we don't expect any interruptions. Now why I can't promise you the exact date is about 2 weeks ago, Dana bought a short line gasket company called Magnum Gaskets. Now all they bought was the name and the assets, the part numbers and the people who did the catalog, and they bought no manufacturing. So we figured what they got with Magnum, as near as we can tell, is about 1,800 part numbers. So you add the 1,800 to the, roughly 3,600 that they have. That gets them closer, to being a full line supplier. Still not anywhere near the 9,000 they need, but I can see why they did that. But we don't know, because they did that, we don't know whether they're going to come to us next week and say, hey guys, let's do a handshake and cut this deal off. We'll go our way, you can go yours. We just don't know that. But we're bound by a contract, otherwise if they don't come to us, we'll keep selling this Victor Reinz brand until the end of March next year. Yep, got it approved by the Germans. So we're ready to go. And you laugh, but sometimes that's not easy getting it approved by Germany. But it will be, if you walk down in the shop downstairs and looked at a Cleveite bearing box, it will be that same pattern, which is little Mahle printed in small letters slanted across the white box in blue. It will be that same design. They have approved it for these. But again, we just don't know yet, what the timetable is going to be.
Does that answer your question, Jim?
Yep. Now also,
We want to stress the Mahle name when we start talking about this with our customers. Victor Reinz is still going to be out there after next March 17th. We're not going to sell Victor Reinz gaskets. We're going to sell Mahle. So we want to stress that Mahle name when we're talking to our customers.
Yeah, really, if you look at these sets, Victor Reinz is mainly a head gasket, manifold gasket manufacturer. So all these little small parts, the lion's share, that's all stuff we've sourced for a long time. And our guys, by the way, and gals, we have one gal in our group doing this too. 2 or 3 of them were there when we were Dana. So, they've been doing this all along, and they know this business. And it's like doing homework for a living. If you've never seen the backside of this business, when a new car comes out, what they do, let's say it's a brand new 2016 high-feature Chevy V6. We get the parts list from General Motors for all the gaskets for that engine. Now, we've already got a gasket set in the line for that engine. So what we do is we compare the 2016 part number to what GM had in 2015. And we compared the 2015 to 2014. If the numbers are the same part number, say for a head gasket, it's like, oh man, this is good. I just go into the computer and carry the coverage forward another year. You guys look it up and now it fits a 2016. Now in some cases that isn't that easy. You look up and you say, oh man, they got different manifold part numbers for the manifold gaskets. Rats. Now what we do is we call our local Chevy dealer, about 2 blocks down the street. We order those manifold gaskets for the new engine. And we get them in and we lay them down right next to last year's. We check them with a micrometer. We look at the holes, everything, trying to figure out what did they change. Because we got to know, do we need a new gasket? Or did they just change maybe the color, or maybe they changed the supplier or something? We don't know. So that's what it's like 9,000 times over,
Chrysler must be a nightmare then.
Ford's the worst.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It'll break down too long.
You could pay me after the meeting. No, actually, Ford drive you crazy because they change so much stuff so often that it keeps you on your toes. I didn't bring a sample tonight, but just so you know it, the new 6.7 Ford, I call it new, 6.7 Ford diesel, we have 100% gasket coverage on it. Everything you need is there. It's in the line. It's sitting there waiting for you. We've even gone as far as the fuel lines for the fuel injection go over the top of the valve covers. So if you're pulling valve covers or doing a manifold swap on those 6.7s, those lines have to come off. Ford says the fitting is a one-use only fitting. Take it off, you're not supposed to use it again. So we have a right and a left fuel line assemblies for those engines. Now we don't include them in the headset because we know we're going to have some cheap customers who are going to say, don't listen to those guys at Ford. We can use these again. So we sell them separately, but they are available in our line.
You guys do the same thing for the Duramaxes?
I don't know if we have those lines or not. To tell you the truth, I don't know. They go over the cover too?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I'd like to think I knew everything, but man, I'm not even close. So I just don't know. The guys here know how to get a hold of me. Scott does. And anytime you've got a question like that, of course our tech guys, are really good at that, but you can always let me know. I know every one of these gasket guys. I work about 10 feet from them. And so I can walk over and get a question, and I can get it pretty darn quick. And we're kind of divided up by product line. We've got a guy that does Ford, guy that does GM, guy that does Chrysler, and then one poor slob that has to do everything else. He's got the worst job. That usually is the first guy we hire in. But he does all the foreign stuff and thermostats on top of that. But we've kind of got it divided up that way. Our Ford guy worked for Ford before he came there. Man, he's really good. You know, and that's all he's ever done. He was a Ford tech guy on the phones at Ford before we hired him. So really we've got a good bunch of people. More questions? Yeah, back here. Then we'll get you next.
I was curious about your ag applications.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't see anything on the presentation about the ag situation.
Old ag, pretty good. New ag, yeah, so-so. I'm probably better than anybody but the OE dealer, but you know, we're not going to be everything to everybody in the ag market. But the old stuff, you know, the Waukeshas, the Continentals, we got a lot of head gaskets for those babies. And unlike, again, the folks you got now, we didn't cheapen those gaskets up. We're still using designs just like they used 30, 40, 50 years ago when they did the engine. Felpro said, that's too expensive. We're going to go down to a cheaper gasket. But we just felt that, you know, these things, when you take them apart, you want to fix them and you want them to stay fixed. And we just didn't think that was the thing to do. You had a question here.
Two questions. Pretty good coverage and things like differential covers and old carburetor-based gaskets and that kind of stuff.
Pretty much.
How about performance gaskets?
We're working on that. That came up today a couple times. And we've got a list of the common performance Felpro stuff you sell. And we're working to interchange to us. And then, what we don't interchange, we have a company in Ohio called Cometic. And they started out strictly making head gaskets. Actually started out in the power sports, snowmobiles and stuff like that, motorcycles. And now they've kind of graduated into not only racing gaskets, but pretty nice assortment of performance sets and stuff. And I've known them for years. I was over there about 2 weeks ago. And they're very interested in buying some parts from us to fill up their sets. And we're, of course, interested in buying some product from them to fill in some of these voids that we have left. So I hope that by the time we do your changeover, we'll be maybe 98, 99% of where we need to be to fill in what you're getting from Felpro. But we're working on it. We understand that is an issue. So, yes, sir. Way in the back. Well, how old is antique? Old as you and I, or older?
I have some customers that come in looking for stuff in the 30s even, as far as
Yeah,
that goes.
yep. We got flathead Fords. And otherwise, we probably cut off about, in the early 50s maybe. You know, inline six-cylinder Chevys and stuff is still pretty good then. But I'll give you a little hint. When you're looking for that old stuff, maybe you know this already, there's a company out in Washington State called Reinz Gaskets. And man, they know old cars and old gasket coverage like nobody else in the world. So when you're dealing with, a Packard and other stuff from maybe the 20s, early 30s, we don't have it. But Reinz does. So look them up. They're on there. You can do a Google search and find Reinz Gaskets. Tell them Bill from Mahle sent you. I've been sending people there for about 35 years. But what they did originally was they would buy, when we discontinue a number, they would buy that inventory, and then they would put it in and sell it. Now don't expect bargains there, They got to be paid for doing all that. So, you can spend several $100s on a gasket set for one of those old vehicles. But they do very good. Aggie, pretty good. But I think my first call would be Olson's and then Aggie's. But we got, basically we got to put stuff in the line that you're going to sell. We don't want it back in a year or two because it's never moved. Okay, any more questions?
I got one.
going.
5 minutes and we're gonna quit. That'll be
All right.
8:25. All right.
What are you gonna do to change the culture? You quoted what, $600 for that one gasket set.
Yeah.
You got those guys who buy Felpro and they piece them together and they just try to get by on the cheap.
Yeah.
What are you doing to help us sell that set? And you're hitting all the periodicals, all the shop magazines. and all
Yeah, quite a bit. We're doing these stories, you know, of what's in the set and trying to talk to people about, you know, the gaskets they use. What we also do is on YouTube, I heard you mention YouTube tonight, we have about 100, I think the last count I checked was about 107 videos on YouTube. They're instructional. Most of them are 2 or 3 minutes. And we found out that the average view time on YouTube of a video is 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So I can make a 30-minute video, but nobody's going to watch more than 2 minutes of it. So we aim for 3 minutes or less. But it's simple. Good example. How to figure out what the numbers on the back of a cleveite bearing mean. You know, not all the world history of bearings, but real simple. How do you figure out what do those numbers mean? Okay. How's a multi-layered steel gasket work? We talked about that tonight. We have them divided into sections. There's a gasket section, bearing section, ring section, filter section. And we see on average each month about 35,000 minutes of view time on those videos. You think about it, that's a lot of people sitting there watching videos. And often there are people trying to figure out how this works, what it does. But that's a tough question. I'm going out and do Saturday meetings for the summer with technicians. This is our first year of trying it, but we're doing 5 cities around the U.S. Hour-and-a-half session from 5 different manufacturers, us, Gates, Timken, and 2 others. None of us compete with each other, but we've all kind of gone together and put this seminar thing together. So we work hard to get the message out. I do online webinars about 4 or 5 times a year for industry associations. I just did one a couple of weeks ago on understanding new piston rings and the technology behind them. So I think we do better than most companies out there, but it's difficult. You know, at the end of the day, we have to sell. So, you know, I always have to keep that in mind. Yes, we can educate, but at the end of the day, we got to sell product. We feel that we would do a disservice if we sold you garbage. Let me give you one example. And we got to watch this because we're about out of time. Let me get a gasket here. Here we go. Try this with brand X gaskets. See what I'm doing here? I'm bending this stainless steel layer. Let me get over here. I'll show you all. Notice how it snaps back? Let me show you over here. See how that snaps back? That snaps back because it's tempered stainless steel. So let's say I'm a low buck brand Y gasket. Not us or Felpro, but we're going on down the food chain. A Husa and some of these other companies. Got to take money out of this gasket because they can't sell them for as much as we do. So if you're that company, what are the 2 things you can scrimp on and nobody's going to know the difference? Temper of the stainless steel, because it's all shiny, you know, it looks good, but they can cut on the temper, and heat-treated steel costs more than non-heat-treated steel. So we scrimp on the temper. Then, black goo looks like black goo, doesn't it, to the average customer? So they cheat on this coating. You could take your thumb, I tried this sometime on some of these cheap lines, and you can just peel that black coating off that gasket. Try that on here. You got to really get aggressive to peel it off of there. So those are the 2 places they cheat. So their gasket sells for, you know, maybe 25% less than what you're going to sell. Here's the deal. Remember I told you how these beads have to spring up and down, literally thousands and thousands of times. So if I take the heat treat out, what happens after maybe 1,000 or 2 times? They get tired. And then the gasket starts to weep and seep. Often what happens is the engines run long enough that the owner he doesn't blame the gasket. It's that crappy Chevrolet or that crappy Ford, or it was that crummy mechanic that put these on for me. Well, what's happened is cheap gasket didn't last. So we see that a lot with these cheap lines. We look at them. We're not just sitting there turning our stuff out. We're buying the cheap junk and looking at it. And our rubber molds, we see really ugly looking. Look on their magnifier where the molds are wore out and they're still using them. Valve stem seals. You look in the magnifier in the center of the seal, which is supposed to have nice grooves in it, it'll have pieces missing because the molds are wore out. Well, molds cost money. So you use them molds forever and don't replace them, you save money. So again, the average person looks at that set, that set looks just like a Victor Reinz. Well, it does until you start looking more carefully at it. So we do that as well. All right, you're the absolute last question here, and then we're going to take a break. I'll stay here too if you want to come up and visit, but not fair to keep everybody here beyond what we promised. So,
Well, you had a discussion about there's like 9,000 SKUs that you have available.
yes, sir.
And it's one thing to have a list of 9,000 numbers that you can access and sell to somebody, but what's your depth of coverage in your locations compared to that list of those 9,000 numbers?
Our depth of coverage in Olive Branch, Mississippi is about, I don't know, 98%, whatever our order fill is, probably 97, 98%. So any given day, man, that is our master warehouse. LA is pretty good. And PA, Pennsylvania is okay. We just got it going about a year ago. But the master place where we want to ship most of your stuff from is Mississippi.
Yeah.
So
The
we-
reason I asked that question, I've had a few instances where one of my shops will go online, find the part number they need, and it's a Felpro number, and we can call upstairs to the order desk to check on availability for the part number, and it's just not available.
Yeah, I know that story. They do something we don't do.
Okay.
When we release a part number to you, we have inventory. Felpro was notorious for releasing numbers months before they had the part on the shelf. Makes it look good. Oh yeah, we got this. I'll try to order it, But we've been that way for years. And again, remember, I've been here a long time. Every time we'd ever try to do that, thinking, especially in the paper books, because if you didn't get in the book, it was another year, before anyone knew you had it. But every time we would do that, it would bite us. And we finally said, we are not printing a number if we don't have inventory on the shelf. So sometimes we're going to lose the sale. Nowadays with electronic catalogs, they're getting updated weekly. So it's not the issue it was back in the book days, but it's there. Also, your buyer here, I'm not sure who that is, but your buyer here can access our inventory online and see real time what gasket we have and where. So, and it's nice when you're looking, especially for the weird stuff, that 53 Chevrolet, 236 cylinder. If you got a part number, they can access our system and see, yeah, they got that. They got 12 of them in Mississippi. One in, wherever. I can do it from my hotel room and see that inventory real time. The other cool thing about that I like is if it's really scarce and there's one left in the country, the minute you order it online for your warehouse here, it's done. Somebody else calls in 3 minutes later or accesses 3 minutes later, that inventory is allocated to you the minute you hit order. So that's kind of nice. Usually it's no issue, but sometimes, it's a scarcity of older parts especially. So to answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. So here's
Special order shipping policy.
our special order shipping policy. Normally, now I don't know what kind of a deal we've made with you because I'm not the deal maker. And that was Odom, who was here before. Normally, freight free for us is $1,950. So when you place a stock order over that amount, you pay no freight. Okay? Also, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. If I am, I know I'll get smacked. As far as we're concerned, your being a customer allows you to access any product we have. Turbocharger, filters, bearings. Now again, that's up to the staff here and your buyer if they choose to do that. But as far as we're concerned, you are now a Mahle customer for any product line we have in the aftermarket. Okay? You guys sell turbos? I guess we haven't asked you. A few now and then? All right. Here's the last question now. See, if you can get this right, should be a prize for you. Who is Mahle's largest turbocharger customer? Mahle's largest. Now I'll give you a hint. It's the last place you'd think of when you said, I need a turbo. We have a wise ass back here.
No, you said it.
Oh, all right. Last place you'd think of it when you needed a turbo. No one wants to guess? It's AutoZone. Now, how many of you would think of AutoZone when you need a turbo? Well, my theory is they got a lot of stores, and they sell them by accident. Guy comes in for a Volkswagen diesel part, and the AutoZone counter guy says, oh, did you know we had turbos for that? No, I didn't know that. So what I suggest to you is probably there's some missed sales on turbos here. Maybe because you never tell a customer that you've even got them. Because I can't imagine any other way AutoZone is our number one customer on turbos. And by the way, our number one selling turbo? Volkswagen diesel. Man, there are a lot of Volkswagen diesels out there. That's our number one selling turbo. So I'll leave you with that thought. Again, I'd be glad to hang around for a while and visit. We're excited. We thank you for giving us this opportunity. And we will follow up and make sure that you have no regrets as we get on down the road. So thanks again, folks. Appreciate it.